This is the most terrifying unsolved mystery ever. 5 young men drove into the mountains one night and never came back. So 5 friends from high school, Bill, Ted, Jack, Gary, and Jackie, were hanging out after school one night. They decided to drive around and ended up 70 miles away in the Sierra Nevada mountains. But their Mercury Montego was eventually found abandoned, full tank of gas, no damage, keys missing. He thought he'd stumbled upon a skeleton, but it turned out to be one of the missing men, naked except for his shoes, which were neatly tied together and placed at the foot of a tree. It was like the person or people who had brought them there had carefully placed them like dolls in a dollhouse. None of the men had been robbed. They hadn't even been beaten. You can't put 5 strong guys in a car without them resisting, unless they were all best friends and they were doing that on purpose. But what if there really was a monster in those mountains that night? What if it lured them in, promised them some kind of twisted pleasure, and then used their own desires against them? Maybe they entered the mountains willingly, but they didn't come back because what they encountered up there was beyond human comprehension. But if they were doing that on purpose, why would they do that? What did they know? What did they see? Who did they meet up there in the mountains that night? All 5 cars were parked in the same spot, suggesting that they had all arrived together. They had all willingly gotten into the car, and while they may have been scared, they hadn't run away or tried to hide. In fact, when their families reported them missing, the police didn't even launch a search until 2 weeks later. That doesn't seem normal. Why did anyone think that 5 healthy young men would suddenly decide to abandon their cars and run away into the freezing cold mountains? The question is, why? What kind of sick person does something like that? And when they searched the area, they found more bodies. 2 of the men had been scattered miles apart. One had walked 20 miles through knee-deep snow in the dead of night before collapsing and freezing to death. The other 3 were found in a clump close to each other. But only one had been in the trailer, and the men were gone. Searchers found their clothes and footprints in the snow. But despite an extensive search, all they found was one of the men emaciated, frozen inside a trailer deep in the woods with 12 days' worth of untouched food. So, what happened here? I don't know. I'm just glad I live in a peaceful world where nothing like this could ever happen. It is easy for us to think we raise smart, and we'd never fall victim to something like this. After finding the trailer, police scoured the area, and there were some strange discoveries. Like, just outside the trailer, they found a pair of men's shoes, neatly placed side by side. And then they found a man's watch that didn't belong to any of the men. All this was very suspicious, but it wasn't enough to link any other people to the crime. But back in the 70s, people did things differently. People would go missing without a trace. They wouldn't lock their doors or leave notes or anything. This case is especially disturbing because of how normal these guys seemed. But then they vanished. There was no history of substance abuse, mental illness, or anything like that. They were just ordinary guys living ordinary lives. And it gets even weirder. And then, 2 months later, a hiker found a body. All of this suggested that the men had been abducted and taken to the woods. But there was something strange about the way they'd been found. But when you look at the facts, there are some holes. The thing is, I can't answer that, but I'm pretty sure that if someone tried to force them into the car, someone would have noticed. I know that we live in a cynical world, and we always want to blame the victims for what happened to them. What do you think happened in the comments?